My name is Alicia. I teach the wellness satsangs once a month. So I do mind, body, and spirit. I try to avoid, I don't do too much of the spirit aspect because we get that here in the studio. So I try and just fill in the gaps for the other stuff. I am on the faculty for a Jewel in the Lotus, the YTT yoga teacher training program, to give them kind of that missing piece that I think a lot of yoga students have to find on their own, which is nutrition. And unfortunately, if you have to find the information on your own, it's very confusing. I've been doing research probably about 20 years. It's gotten worse with the amount of information that's out there at this point. It's a good thing and it's a very bad thing because there's more information, easily accessible, but that leads to a lot of misinformation and people kind of, it's the telephone game that we used to play when we were kids. I have a master's in holistic wellness. Mind, body, spirit was why I picked that. And I'm a Green Fire Wise Woman, which means that I took studies for a year and a day to learn about the medicinal properties of herbs, or those things that are called weeds, dandelion, mugwort, and all that fun stuff. So in that training, I learned about herbs, essential oils, chakras, what else? All kinds of other things. Reiki, that's where I got my Reiki attunements from. And I think that's about it. So tonight, without further ado, we shall begin. Discussing a bunch of different things tonight. As always, at any point, if you want to stop me, feel free. Satsangs are the discussion of like-minded individuals. Whether or not we agree has nothing to do with it. Sometimes we'll disagree with each other, but it's a matter of just kind of being respectful. It's a very safe and sacred space. Anything that you hear here stays here. I do always urge you, if you hear something I say, check it. I'm fallible. I'm a human being. I'm not above laws of mistakes, unfortunately, as I've learned. So, I always tell people, check what I'm saying. Even though I have a bunch of research behind me, that research could be wrong and it could be, cited. Biased is the word I'm looking for. In this workshop, we'll cover staple foods for a plant-based diet to keep optimal levels of protein, iron, and vitamin B12, because these are things that are sometimes lacking in a plant-based diet. Lifestyle, I'm sorry, I don't like the word diet. There are also things that are often missing in an omnivorous, where it's, people consume flesh. So unfortunately, it is just a rampant problem. Healthy greens without overdoing it, overcooking, or overeating them. Gluten-free, dairy-free, nightshade-free. The difference between allergies, sensitivities, and is elimination truly necessary? A close look at fad diets. I say close because most of you know how I feel about them. And foods that may lead to weight loss or weight gain. There is a quick little bit of paleo info in here that I'll share with you. It's interesting. When something says a recommended daily allowance, that means it's the minimum requirement before you will have a disease. Yes, and that's always my favorite one, because do you guys know where the word limeys came from, why the British are called limeys?
Yes.
Not
No.
you. Okay, good. You can share it then, since you know. Yes? Tara?
Oh, it's because the vitamin B deficiency, vitamin C deficiency, they were getting scurvy, which is your teeth fall out and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Being at sea for the longest time, and somebody discovered that limes were high in vitamin C. So, and they kept well because they have nice skins, thick skins, and so they would just give them bushels and bushels of limes to take with them, and they would chop up, and everybody, I guess, everybody's ration would include like a lime a day or something, and
The British are coming with their limes. That's where that cute little, I like useless information like that, but it also helps me remember stuff like that. So now you'll never forget why the British are called limeys, because when they were at sea, they ate limes and it cured the scurvy. That's where they figured out that vitamin C fixed the scurvy problem. So, a well-stocked pantry has an assortment of foods for easy and quick meals down to more time-consuming meals. Beans, quick cooking grains, veggie burgers, frozen veggies, spices, extra virgin olive oil, or dairy-free butters, condiments such as ketchup, mustard, mayo, vinegars, veggie bouillon, relish with no high fructose corn syrup. Has anybody, by the way, tried to ever find relish gesundheit without high fructose corn syrup? You can only get it at some kind of like a natural food store. I can find it at Wild by Nature, and that's it. The only other option that I've done in the past is to buy a brand of bread and butter pickles that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup. Again, good luck with that. And then stick it in the food processor and make it into relish. But yeah, they normally have that. Sprouted or gluten-free grains. Joanne loves sprouted right now. Tofu or tempeh, miso and nut butters and jellies. Those are foods that if you're in a pinch, are good to keep on hand. Like that's what you keep stocked. If you're really hungry, just smear some cashew butter on some sprouted bread, some jelly if you want it, or a banana, whatever, and then poof, you've got a meal real quick if you're in a pinch. If you have more time, flours, an assortment of sugars or agave fruits, dried or fresh beans, fresh veggies, and thickeners. Those are things that take a little more time. I have a counter full of fresh dried beans, because that's what I do. I have time, I have to have time to soak them overnight and then stick them in the pressure cooker. The thing is, if you have a pressure cooker and you're not scared of it, I had to get over the fear because I had a top blow once. You can cook garbanzo beans, fresh organic garbanzo beans, in a matter of 6 minutes. Quick. Compared to the quick cook method that's on bags sometimes, and it never seems to work. You can boil them for an hour and let them sit for 2. I don't know, I can't do the math on it. They never seem to work for me. The pressure cooker has been like life-altering. I can't tell you the things that I've cooked in that pressure cooker since a friend gave it to me and renewed the vigor in it. So actually that almost is a quick cooking food, or quick cooking method. First rule, be careful or avoid supplementation. I mean, you guys know how I feel about supplements. It's easy to go the wrong way on supplements. Once you, I believe it may say in those papers, an excess of one can cause a deficiency in another. So if you don't know what you're doing or you're not living by that like it's a Bible, it can be very, very confusing. Unless your physician or nutritionist has prescribed supplements, or you've had blood work done. We'll discuss that in a little bit about the blood work thing, because the problem is a lot of times symptoms for one vitamin deficiency are also symptoms for another vitamin deficiency, and if you don't actually have blood work, you could prescribe yourself the wrong vitamins or supplements. And it could be a problem. It may not be, but it could be. Supplementation isn't bad as long as you're cautious and advised about what you're ingesting. Again, as I've stated in the past, supplements have a lot of fillers in them sometimes. They're made with foods that are, they're not made with foods. They're made with, these little things that your body can't really digest. You swallow a capsule or you swallow a pill and you think it's a bunch of vitamins, and your body looks at it and goes, I don't know what to do with this. I can't break it down. It can't either break down the packaging that it's in, so to speak, the capsule that it's in, or the surrounding, the coating that it's in. Sometimes the coatings are made from waxes, they're made from plastics, they're just made from all kinds of things. So it's hard to get good quality supplements. You pay a lot more for a good quality supplement. A good quality supplement is made from whole foods. They'll say on them from whole foods. It also depends on whether they're, I may have discussed this before, whether they're fat-soluble or whether they're water-soluble vitamins. Vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin. What that means is it dissolves in water. So you take vitamin C in the morning, you take, I've seen some of these pills that are like 1,500 milligrams. You pop a pill, and then as soon as you urinate, there goes all the vitamin C, because it's water-soluble. So as soon as it hits the water in your body, Now that vitamin C is gone. What is actually recommended is that you take vitamin C 3 times a day in smaller increments. So you would take like 500 a day, or 500 a serving, I guess. And you take it on an empty stomach. But for some reason, they don't tell you all those things. That's why, again, supplements get very confusing if you don't. That's why you see a nutritionist.
Everybody thinks more is better.
Yeah, and unfortunately, again, it leads to overloads. If it's a fat-soluble vitamin, it doesn't dissolve in water. What that does is they store in your fat cells. So those fat-soluble vitamins store a little bit, keep storing, a little keep storing. It's like interest in your bank account. What happens? It just keeps growing, growing, growing. So eventually it can lead to toxicity.
ADEK, that used to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
what
that's how I always remember it too. I'm like, yeah, no.
Well, that's could be a problem because, you know, if you take too much of some of these, you know, if you don't, the fat soluble ones, you, like, you know, Alicia was saying, you get toxicity.
Consuming a well-balanced diet that is mostly or completely organic should provide all the nutrients you need unless there is an imbalance in the body or a problem with digestion. Again, your digestion needs to be kind of strong, whether you're taking supplements or not. Your digestion is optimally needs to be very strong. That way it can absorb what it needs to absorb and throw away what it doesn't need to throw away. Unfortunately, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we ingest, the stress that we have makes digestion a big problem. Big problem.
You got probiotics.
Probiotics are very good. Very good. They get tricky as well because you want a full range of the different types of bacteria that are in them.
What about kombucha?
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What is kombucha? Like,
it's
I drink it all the
It's
time.
a tea. You should make it sometime. It's fun.
Apparently it's much, my friends who drink it say it's much better homemade than it is the stuff that you buy. Like,
it's different.
for my friends
yeah.
who make it for their kids and then I've never tasted it, but then they go get some at the store and they're like, oh.
Is kombucha just like flavored probiotics, liquid? Like,
No, what it is there's what's called a
It's
SCOBY.
fermented, right?
Yeah, it's fermented. You take apple cider vinegar and some water, and you get this SCOBY. You can get it online. It's SCOBI, I think it is. It looks like a mushroom. A friend of mine had it in college, or her mom had it. I was like, how is that? It was sitting in a windowsill fermenting, and then a bee landed on it, and we were like, we are not touching whatever that is. Went out of my memory banks, and then all of a sudden kombucha hit the market, and I went, oh my God, that's what she was brewing in like 1995. Holy cow. So you brew it, you brew black tea, you let it cool, otherwise you'll kill the SCOBY. You add some sugar, some apple cider vinegar, it starts to ferment, so it starts to get all of those probiotics in it, and then you refrigerate it. You have to watch it. It's a very delicate process. And then what happens is, it's called friendship tea because the SCOBY gives, it's not a living thing like that, but it basically like gives birth to another SCOBY. Like you end up with 2. So each time that you make a batch, you end up with another SCOBY. So eventually you've got to start giving them to your friends because otherwise you're just going to have a mess of them around the house. I had a neighbor and her and I would make kombucha. She's actually really good at making them. Like she makes peaches and all these different flavors that are very palatable. The ones in the store are good. They tend to, I like them. Like I will drink either one equally. The ones that you make at home are a lot milder than the ones in the store.
Like the Synergy, I guess, is the one I drink.
I love
Gingerade.
That one saved my life.
Really?
When I went to Florida to visit friends. I was eating God knows what, and I went to get on, it was like 3 hours before my plane was about to leave, and I was like, oh, this is not good. This is really not good. I don't know how I'm going to be on a plane for another 4 hours. We went into a health food store, and I grabbed that ginger kombucha. Within 30 minutes of drinking that thing, my stomach was completely settled. That thing saved my life, and I was like, oh, I can get on the plane. It's so good to go. But those, yeah.
Well, if it
Yeah.
says carbon dioxide as an ingredient, is that no good? Or?
They add carbon dioxide. I don't know. He had to change the formula because there is naturally occurring alcohol. It's sugar. It creates alcohol. So for people that used to be alcoholics, sometimes it's a problem. It's usually not, because it's not that, it's not that kind of a thing. But he had to
There's
actually
different
pull it.
types of alcohol.
Yeah, he had to actually pull it off the market for a while because there was too much alcohol for it to be sold in natural food stores. They don't have liquor licenses. It was above a level that actually could be sold in stores. So we had to pull it off the shelves, reformulate the entire thing. I'm imagining at that point is when the carbon dioxide was added, because it's a carbonated drink, which when you make it at home, it's not carbonated. Like I don't know what the difference is in us processing it versus a big plant processing it, but I've never really had carbonation in mine. It still tastes a little bit vinegary. It's always got that kind of flavor, but it doesn't have that effect to it that his does. So he may add carbon dioxide to it to make it bubbly.
It's not like drinking soda, right?
No,
Totally different.
it's totally different, and it is actually very good for you. I'm sure in 10 years they'll figure out that it's not good for you, but for now, it's good for you. According to Harish Johari, who is an Ayurvedic guru, and if you're interested in Ayurveda, chakras, or anything like that, he's a master, or was a master at that. According to him, there's an indication that artificial nutrients may actually contribute to the growth and development of cancer cells. Ayurveda is not going to be real big on supplementation. They're going to tell you to get everything from food or from herbs, which are edible food plants. I mean, people don't seem to worry about vitamins until all of a sudden people become plant-based. And then all of a sudden, everybody's concerned about nutrition. Taking a B supplement can actually help with anemia by forming new red blood cells. That's what the B vitamins do. There are some concerns about vegans relying solely on multivitamins that contain only small amounts of B12. It's been reported that vitamins B1, B3, C, E, and copper and iron can damage B12. Oh, really? You see the confusion. Vitamin C in doses of 500 milligrams or more taken with meals or within 1 hour after a meal may diminish B12 availability. So if you're taking B12 and you're taking vitamin C, you need to do it at separate times. You literally need to have like a little graph on your refrigerator telling you when to take what vitamins. And when you get a multivitamin, typically what happens? They jam all of this in there in the same place, and that doesn't really work. So unfortunately, if you're going to do supplementation, again, I recommend seeing a nutritionist or doing a lot of research. Get a reputable book. There are books at the library that have the information, but get it from them, get the information, and then get individual supplementation. It's going to cost more, but it's your life, I mean, it's important. Remember, B12 is a bacteria. What does vitamin C do? And that's the problem. That's why I was just like, you know what, I'll just eat my vegetables, and I don't know what else, because it gets so confusing to try and mix and match this, that, and the other, and to try and make it simple for people. I don't know. Nutritionists give you like little books.
What's your take on fish oil? I go on and off fish oil because of I read this, I go on, I read that, I go off, I go on,
It depends on where it's coming from. I'm not a fan of fish oil because of that problem. Now, does it ever repeat on you? Because that was a big complaint that a lot of people, that was a complaint a lot of people had. When they took a low quality fish oil, they would burp it back up, and so they would be tasting fish all day long. I'm like, that's probably not very pleasant. I know a lot of people also take it for the essential fatty acids that are in it. It's a good source of omegas. That's again, the joint pain.
Yeah.
That's a reason that a lot of people are taking it, maybe for memory, but I don't know.
Well, it also
I think that's why I started, I think that's why I started taking it again, is because I'm at that age where my
It'll take
memory
time to kick in.
stinks.
Ginkgo biloba helps for that too.
And so I said, well, what do you take? And so she said this, so I'm like, okay, I'll start taking them again.
Yeah. Many multivitamins cannot be chewed, which back to the B12, which is important for B12 absorption in some people. So a lot of, I get my B12 usually from nutritional yeast or once in a while an egg. But I'll get it from nutritional yeast. Usually when you're using nutritional yeast, you're putting it in cashews or you're putting it in some kind of a sauce and you're chewing, because remember, chewing is important. You can make like a vegan Parmesan out of almonds, like you grind up almonds and add some salt and some nutritional yeast, and you know, you can dehydrate it or not dehydrate it, whatever, however fancy you want to get. And that actually is a replacement to Parmesan cheese. It doesn't taste exactly like Parmesan, but you know,
But it makes,
most of our food doesn't.
no, I was gonna say, it's not, no, it does not taste like Parmesan cheese, but it does make you less, you don't feel like you're
Deprived.
as deprived.
Yeah.
I won't go, not, you don't feel deprived at all, but as deprived.
Not quite as bad. So that's a really good one. I know that they have it at Wild by Nature. I'm sure you. I know
I got it on Amazon.
Cornucopia has it.
I don't know if there's different
Probably cheaper.
qualities of them, but
The only thing that I will say is that if it says B12, you do want to check with the company to make sure that they're using plant-based B12 and not animal-based B12, because they can throw that in there.
Should it say vegan then? It'll say.
I get a brand that doesn't say that. I've just done research. I get it from Frontier, and I know that they're safe. We had a lot of people that got the B12 shots for pain when I worked for the chiropractor, and they were always coming like after they got their B12 shots. And they're like, yeah. Oh my God, they are energy. B vitamins are energy supplements. They're great for your heart. They're great for a million things. There's a powder from Nature's Plus that's called, it's an energy shake, and they call it energy shake, and it's Source of Life, and it has so many B vitamins in it. Every time you have it, you know, because the next time you urinate, you're like, hey, I got my B vitamins today. So it does provide a good amount of energy. Next is iron, while we're on the anemia thing. This is the who, what, when, where, why, how kind of iron, if you're iron deficient. If not, it's still good information to have so that you don't become iron deficient, because it is easy to kind of do. Who needs to watch iron levels? Those with weaker digestion, which you may know, you may not know if you have weak digestion. You do need a stronger digestion to actually absorb it properly. Those with a candida infection or chronic herpes have low iron stores just because of those conditions. Rheumatoid arthritis and cancer can also lead to anemia. Those who take excessive antacids, contrary to popular belief, antacids are not your friends. They don't do anything. All they do is mask a problem.
Is that Tums?
Yeah. They mask a problem. If you have to take a lot of Tums, something's wrong. You have to look at something that you're eating, because that whole acid reflux thing, such a good industry. I worked for a PDGI years and years and years ago, and you would see infants that he was doing colonoscopies on and endoscopies on, infants as they're born. They're popping out of mom and then going right into surgery. And it's a huge problem, but those antacids, all they do is coat your esophagus. They just coat the tract. They don't actually cure anything. So meanwhile, the acid's still boiling and bubbling in there. Those who exercise excessively and sweat also lose more iron than most. That's excessive exercise, because you'll lose it in your sweat. What is iron? Iron makes red blood cells, hemoglobin, and helps maintain a healthy immune system. We need only 18 milligrams a day maximum. So you want to check your supplements. Unless you're postmenopausal, in that instance you need less. What happens with iron is you bleed it out every month. So if you're premenopausal, you need more. If you're postmenopausal, you would need a supplement that doesn't have iron in it. Men don't bleed. Men don't need iron. They don't. That's why their supplements always say without iron, because they don't need iron. They're not losing it like we are.
You get iron in beets, right? Or no?
I think so. Yeah, that's probably why they're so good for your blood.
Yeah, there's so many things.
And they're,
Can you get a toxicity too much iron?
Yes.
Too much
Yeah,
of
yeah.
anything.
Yeah,
right?
we're gonna get to that, but yeah, we definitely can.
There are cheap iron supplements or like, rust. I mean, not to be negative, but that's.
But that's true,
it's
that's the
there.
problem, again,
Yeah.
that's my problem with supplementation, you don't know where they're getting those vitamins from a lot of times and those minerals, like, is it coming from rust, like, are they, straight
Well,
from somebody's bumper?
that's the whole point of it, is that your body has to
I
get
know.
it in a particular form that the body can recognize and
Recognizable.
use.
So your body may not be recognizing whatever form you're taking in, it may be too much for you for that point in time. I steer clear of iron supplements because, as we'll see, it gets really, really tricky. Please note that excess iron is dangerous, so you do not want to start taking an iron supplement unless you've been directed to do so by a doctor through blood testing. When should you take it? It's important to take lower levels of iron in more frequent amounts rather than take it all at once, same as we discussed with vitamin C earlier. Your body needs to be able to digest it, and as she was saying, it gets too much, and then your body's like, I can't do anything with that. Where can you find it in a plant-based lifestyle if you're not going to take it in supplement form? Iron can be found in eggs, greens, grains, almonds, avocados, beets, yes, blackstrap molasses, brewer's yeast, dates, dulse, kelp, kidney and lima beans, lentils, millet, parsley, peaches, pears, prunes, notice the alphabetical system here. Pumpkin, yay, raisins, rice and wheat bran, sesame seeds, and soy. Oh, I went out of the alphabet here. Broccoli, pea legumes, not beans. Why should you worry about iron? A deficiency of iron causes brittle hair, nails. Again, that can be caused from a million other things. A deficiency can also cause nails that are spoon-shaped or with lengthwise ridges running across them. That's when it's spoon-shaped, it's when your nail does this weird, like, bendy thing, like not this way, like where it's a nice shape, but where they have like a weird spoon-shaped consistency to them, and then they have those lengthwise ridges running across them. Can also lead to hair loss, fatigue, pallor, dizziness, and anemia, as we know. Please note, if you have these symptoms, you should have a blood test done first to determine that there is an actual deficiency, so that in case it's not something else. Maybe you just work too much and you're really tired. How is it best absorbed? First, do not have coffee and black tea with iron foods. So you can't have coffee or black tea with any of those. The tannins in it kill the iron.
So don't need coffee and eggs in the morning.
Yeah, there you go. Breakfast is the shot.
Or peaches.
Yeah, coffee and peaches, doggone it. Peach flavored creamer. Don't take calcium, zinc, antacids. All of these interfere with absorption again, as we discussed earlier, the antacids. Stop the antacids. Excess zinc and vitamin E will also inhibit absorption. So again, you see how if you start taking zinc to clear up your skin or you have a skin condition, it can deplete your body of iron. So it gets a little trickier, so you want to have a doctor keep checking your blood. Do have it with vitamin C to increase absorption up to 5 times. So like when you cook tomatoes in a cast iron skillet, bingo! There you got it. You got some vitamin C and you got it in your iron, because the acid in those will pull off some of the iron in the cast iron skillet. Then you'd want to not add the other stuff, and it gets confusing.
This is what I find so challenging about nutrition, is to have this with that and not have that with that, and it's just like makes me want to go.
That's why, honestly, a lot of
McDonald's,
times,
I mean, you know,
I know.
it's terrible.
It's just bread. It does get confusing. That's why I say eat a variety, because otherwise it is like a prescription, and then food is more work than it is fun.
Right.
If
you can. Right?
Yeah, do the best you can.
Right.
Yeah.
We can always do better, and once you conquer one thing, then you get to the next. Like, it is overwhelming. Like, if I were to sit there and like analyze every single meal that I ever fed someone or I ever fed myself,
Yeah.
I'd be a basket case.
Right.
Because sometimes stuff just tastes good together. Tomatoes and spinach, they're really good together. Probably shouldn't have them together. Yeah, I have oxalates.
Yeah.
Tomato,
Right.
you go insane.
So unless you're having specific difficulty with something, I guess.
Right, eat a varied diet.
Okay.
That's what I say. Copper, manganese, molybdenum, vitamin A, and a B complex will increase iron absorption. So those are good things. But again, I was thinking of that. That's why a lot of people, I think, cook in copper skillets and stuff now, copper cookware. Low stores of B6 or B12 can cause anemia, hence taking it with a B complex. So if you're taking iron and then you take the B complex, now you've got two things helping to fight the anemia, so it kind of helps get it under control. You may also want to avoid or lower the following foods if you have an issue with lower stores of iron. Anybody here happen to have them? Otherwise, I'm going to skim through them really, really quickly. Okay, good. Skim through it really quickly. Oxalic acid foods, almonds, asparagus, beets, cashews, chocolate, dairy, kale, rhubarb, soda. Soda shouldn't be in there anyway. Spinach, Swiss chard, most nuts, most beans, coffee, and black tea. So if you have excessive, like if you have a deficiency in iron, stay away from those foods for a little while until you get those stores back up and then you're good to go. Maybe that's to cut out coffee and black tea. And then one of my favorites, protein. Love the protein. Love that. Love it, love it, love it. Certain necessary items such as sulfur and nitrogen are provided only through proteins. If you're an introvert, interestingly enough, you need a little more protein than extroverts do. So a little FYI useless information for you. Proteins break down into amino acids. They're used to make cells, tissues, and enzymes. Please note taking an extra or inadequate protein converts to glucose, aka sugar. That's kind of useless, isn't it? It needs more sugar in the body. It's used for energy output as long as it's needed. Otherwise, it's stored as fat. So all those high-protein diets eventually are going to store as fat eventually. There's no one food group that is good to consume only. Need a fair.
Chocolate.
No. Especially if you ask the wrong person about that one. No. No chocolate. A vegetarian or plant-based diet requires eating a variety of foods to ensure complete proteins are achieved. Doesn't mean you have to eat them at the same meal. Your body is smart enough to say if you had rice at one meal and beans at the next, you know, it's going to know to pull out the amino acids that it needs. A typical 150-pound male only needs about 35 grams protein per day. Pretty sure that's not what most people are saying when they say, do you get enough protein? 35 grams. That's an average male. Well, 150 pounds, but that's not really that average anymore. Excess protein cannot be stored by the body. It puts extreme pressure on the kidneys. There's a lot of kidney failure that happens from having too much protein in the diet. Body can't do anything with it. I can't pronounce the actual condition that it causes in the kidneys. But it does cause a big problem. Sprouts are one of the best sources of nutrients. What happens with a sprout, it's a fascinating little process. You take a seed, you soak it, and then all of a sudden it starts to kind of hatch into this little form that grows a little tail. When the tail is twice the length of the actual original seed, that's when you want to ingest it. That's when it has the highest content of nutrients. Because what happens is now that little seed that was lying dormant has been watered and now goes, oh, I need to grow into a big plant. What do I need to do? And it starts, you know, releasing all of these lovely little chemicals and nutrients, and it makes you, so when you ingest it, you get to ingest all of those. So they are about 400% the nutrient content of just the seed itself before it's soaked. That's why in raw food you soak nuts, you soak seeds, you do all that, and then, you know, sprouts have a big, you know.
So you're eating fetal plants.
Yes, eating little plant babies. Yummy. We'll move on from that one quickly.
Lovely.
Unfortunately, many of us eat too much protein. Most of us here require about 0.8 grams of protein per 2.2 pounds of body weight.
Oh, geez.
Let's make it real easy. 40 to 60 grams of protein per day. Probably on the lower end. You guys doing yoga probably need 40 or so, but if if a 150-pound male only needs 35 grams of protein, you need less. Protein is needed more when you're a child or when you're pregnant. Those time periods, or if you're bodybuilding or you're exercising a lot, because you need it for growth. That's what protein does. It helps you grow. So if you're not growing as a child, or you're not growing as a pregnant woman, and you're not growing muscle because you're a bodybuilder or you happen to be doing a lot of teacher training, you don't need as much. But in those times, you would need a little tiny bit more than normal. Net protein utilization, or biological value, is how efficiently the body can actually assimilate the protein source. It's not how much protein is in the food. So when you see something like BV is usually how they abbreviate it, it just means that your body is able to digest that protein. It's readily available, this, that, and the other. It doesn't mean that, oh, it's got 20 grams of protein, you need to eat this. It means it's a higher quality, not quantity. Chicken eggs are the highest BV value, then dairy, brown rice, and beef, poultry in that order. Plant protein is used to feed cattle rather than humans. Yeah, animals grow big and strong, and our planet faces malnourishment of thousands per day. Malnutrition of thousands per day. 1/2 of our crops are cattle food, not people food. That's a big problem.
What's that?
Half. The world hunger is a huge problem. There are people starving every second. Every second there are children dying. But yet, as a country, we're living in excess and feeding wasted plants to animals.
Well, we keep trying to supersize everything, give you your fries because it's cheaper for them to sell it here than it is to ship it overseas.
It's because
But
overseas
some
won't
of
accept
that is, I mean, not to get controversial, but some of it is political.
Oh,
Unfortunately, in
God.
a lot of those countries where people
it.
are
Yeah.
dying, it's not that countries aren't willing to send them stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's that these fat cats won't let it in,
Yeah.
or they'll take it and then it won't end up with the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I
It's a
mean,
huge-
you can't fix malnutrition and malnourishment by eating a
make-
plant-based diet. It's not that simple.
No.
It's a very complex problem. That's a portion of it. Again, there are a lot of politics involved, and one day we'll get it all straight. I hope.
You keep believing that.
Maybe. That's what keeps me going every morning. It will be good one day. It will be good. The level of phosphorus in milk is so high that it inhibits the absorption of iron, magnesium, zinc, and copper. So if you have a deficiency in iron, or you're worried about vitamin and mineral levels in your body, ditch the dairy. And that has nothing to do with political. That is clearly just a health aspect of it.
Is it cheese too?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That's
and-
the hard
and-
one to get rid of, actually,
Yeah,
I think.
it is. That's what because of the hormones that are in it. People, they're like, I'm addicted to cheese. You absolutely are. Absolutely. Lacto-ovo sources of complete protein are brewer's yeast, butter, buttermilk, cheese, cream, ghee. Again, most of these I don't recommend ghee. Okay, if you're getting it from a reputable source. Milk, nuts, gram, which is gram is a flour. Usually, like you'll see chickpea flour, gram, because it's a bean that's been pulsed. They call it a pulse, and it's been turned into like a powder, a flour that you can use. Cooked soybeans, wheat germ, and yogurt. Protein foods are carrots, all greens, potatoes, red beets, turnips, and seeds. What are all those protein foods? And artichokes, which are not on this list, are one of my favorites. Like 1/3 cup of artichokes have like 9 grams of protein in them. It's something ridiculous. I flipped over the can one day. I forget what I was looking for, and I was like, what? Where did that come from? A little artichoke? Little guy? Got some. And how tasty are they? Craving sweets, add protein, chromium, or zinc to help the pancreas balance out sweets if you have excessive sweet tooth. There's something missing. If you're craving sweets on a regular basis, there's something missing, whether it's spiritual or actually physical like this. Healthy greens without overdoing it, overcooking, or overeating them. Is it possible to overeat them? Sure, we just discussed that iron can, cause a problem. There was a recent article I read, I laughed after I screamed, that kale causes like an uptake of chemicals into your body because it absorbs nutrients. I mean, it absorbs chemicals from the soil because of, the process. Yes, it does. Okay, it leaches heavy metals into your body if you eat too much kale. But seriously, how much kale is everybody eating?
Yeah.
I mean, I eat a lot of kale, and
And you still
I'm
can't eat a
not-
lot of kale, yes.
yeah, I'm still not eating that much, I mean, we ate it all the time as a kid, and I'm perfectly healthy, see, and I still look young. Eat more greens!
It was all the preservatives in the kale.
Not back then. Mm-mm. Greens are pungent, bitter. Remember that from Ayurveda last month? Pungent, bitter. Pungent means a little spicy. There are some spicy ones. What's the one?
Habanero.
Cilantro.
Arugula?
No, that's it. Arugula is a very pungent type of green. Good one. But
It's
pungent.
good, but you definitely have to mix it in.
You gotta watch it. Yeah, I'm like, ooh, I gotta counteract that with something, and I like bitter foods. I mean, pungent foods. They're also very bitter. Bitter foods are really good for us. We don't get enough in the American diet. I don't find it bitter, but I think my palate is a little more on the bitter side. Like that's what I tend to crave. But I was introduced to that like 7 years ago, I think. I didn't know about it until I moved up here, and I'm like, oh my god, it's the northern kale. This stuff is amazing. Yeah, I will literally eat an entire bunch of broccoli rabe in one sitting. I don't care. This stuff's good. They're rich in vitamins and minerals. They help detox your system. That's why you always see it in detoxes. Eat kale, raw kale, spinach, whatever, throw it in a smoothie because they do help detox you. Greens can inhibit the absorption of calcium because some of the oxalic acid in them. Spinach, beet greens, which beet greens are so delicious. I don't know why we don't eat more of them. And Swiss chard, unfortunately, are the offenders. If you want to limit, or you would want to limit them if you eat them regularly. Spread out the other greens. Like that's only 3 out of 900 greens that are out there. So you can still eat them, but again, moderation. Some greens are okay raw for some people. Some people can handle it Ayurvedically, not Ayurvedically. I was in the raw food fad when it was going about. Some people can't digest raw foods. They just don't work necessarily for some people. Some are better lightly steamed or sauteed. There are some times that raw kale bothers me. Like it just seems to be stuck right here in my throat. So I know the next time I have it to saute it just really quickly or bake it or have it as kale chip, whatever. Just do something, cook it very lightly. And then sometimes it has to be in a soup and it's got to be like down to mush. Most greens only need to be cooked a very short while. Simmering on low heat for 7 to 15 minutes, depending on the green, is usually enough time to get it softened enough. If it's something hearty like kale, gonna go a little more towards the 15-minute mark. If you were to do that with spinach, it gets like a weird funky odor and taste that is just not very pleasant to me anyway. Swiss chard's another one. Like those very soft greens, you'd want to put, cook them a little more on the 7-minute side. Massaging greens also helps break down and cook them. If I make kale salad for people, you add a little bit. I actually have a video on YouTube of it. Just pour a little bit of olive oil on it and a little bit of sea salt, and when you massage it, it agitates it so that it starts to break it down a little bit and makes it a little more digestible for people. I love greens. I am not eating raw kale that hasn't been massaged. It's just I don't know. It's like yard clippings, and I ate grass as a kid, so I just I don't know. It's all starting to make sense now, isn't it? So it does.
Long grass.
Still eat it. So overcooking greens can destroy not only the mineral content of them, but also their flavor. Like I said with spinach, if it gets overcooked, it gets like this weird, funky taste that it's just unpleasant. It often intensifies the bitterness, unfortunately, sometimes. gluten-free, dairy-free, nightshade-free. Does everybody know what nightshades are?
Belladonna,
Huh?
belladonna.
Eggplant,
Eggplant,
tomatoes, bell
is
pepper.
that?
They grow at night.
Oh.
That's when they flourish. I know, they were real creative when they came up with the name for that one. But that's what they flourish at night.
Wait, when you say nightshade free, then they can't have any of those.
Yes, there are some people that, for various reasons, whether it's rosacea, whether it's from arthritis, you know, whatever, they, you know, inflammation. Yeah.
Shade-free diet for arthritis.
Yep.
pain.
I have a friend that swears by it. I don't know if it's mental or physical, but who cares? It's working for her. If you have a problem with inflammation or arthritis, because arthritis is inflammation.
My sister went to what she calls her woo-woo doctor, and he looked at her tongue and told her,
I see why
cut out
he's a
the,
woo
cut out the
doctor.
nightshades.
Did it work?
It did.
See? So much for that woo
Well,
doctor.
she goes to him. She
He's
goes
your
back to
doctor.
him, but she just, you know.
Just doesn't want to admit that the woo
Yeah,
doctor
the
is
woo-woo's
right.
working for her.
Yeah, see? Sometimes elimination works in removing the offending antibodies from your body. You know, that's what elimination diets do. They help take away a trigger in your body so that when you introduce it again, you go, ooh, that's the food that I'm having trouble with. There's 7 main foods that usually they'll do in an elimination diet. It's kind of like allergy shots, how allergy shots slowly inject you. They slowly build up your tolerance by injecting you with, say, it's oak or whatever it is. They slowly build up your tolerance. That's the same concept in an elimination diet. You would eliminate the food for a certain amount of time, and then you would slowly reintroduce it in small amounts, because once you start ingesting large amounts, you're going to have that problem again. I don't know, if it's a food that bothers you, I would say just stay away from it. I don't know why you want to reintroduce it. Your body probably can't digest it, and there's a reason why you're having a problem with it. Sometimes our digestion is just too weak to process certain foods, and we need to avoid them. Stay away. If it bothers you, keep away. My grandma loved onions, and then as she aged, they didn't love her, and the poor thing had to give them up.
He said.
I don't know what I did. Hope that's not a genetic thing. The process of an allergy, because it's real popular to say everybody has like an allergy or a food sensitivity, everybody's lactose intolerant, you know, 2/3 of the world is, by the way, lactose intolerant, but you know, everybody's got a problem with gluten, everybody's got a problem with soy. Like every time I go somewhere, they're like, so it's like the big topic. What do you think about soy? Because when you get a healthy food, again, people go the wrong way with it. So it's a healthy food, and all of a sudden everybody's having soy milk, tofu, tempeh, like edamame. Like they're having every type of soy that there is. They're getting it in all kinds of food because soy lecithin, there's soy, you know, soy isolates. It's in everything. So now we've got an overabundance of soy, and now soy is evil. Soy's not evil. Soy
It's
just
meant to
needs
be a
to
condiment, right?
yeah, it needs to be in moderation. It's just, you know, there are soy foods do naturally, some of them do naturally contain MSG. It's just something that happens in the process. So if you have an MSG sensitivity, cut the soy sauce. Only 4% of the population actually has a food allergy.
Well, because a food allergy is like peanuts,
Serious.
not for me, but you know, your throat closes
Yeah.
or something like that.
It's a
People call
serious
everything
problem.
an allergy, and
Yeah.
it's not. I know sometimes it's
And that's the problem, you know, it's all over the
It's just,
internet that
you know, some people I know who have given up gluten, and some, you know, they want to say they were allergic, but they just feel better without it.
you know, because everybody wants to be dramatic and everybody's got something wrong, so we're all. It's not an allergy.
If they gave you an EpiPen, it's an allergy.
Yes. If not, you're okay. Yeah. A food allergy is a very specific immune system response involving either the immunoglobulin E, IgE is how you'll see it, antibody, or T cells. Both are immune system cells that react to a particular food protein, such as milk protein. An IgE reaction occurs within minutes to an hour after eating a food. or either smelling, touching, or ingesting a particular food. That's why, if you have a peanut allergy, you can't be on a plane with peanuts. They will take peanuts off of the plane because the kid can't, or the person can't even have, because the air in there is not filtered, obviously. So if one person eats a peanut, it is now all over that entire plane, and just the smelling of it will cause their throat to swell up.
It's recirculated, the air is recirculated.
Yeah, I have, my best friend's son has an extreme peanut allergy, and you can't even kiss him if you've eaten peanut butter. Like, you kiss him on the cheek. I know, and I forget it right before, every time I see him, I just ate some peanut butter, and I'm like, oh, I'm hugging you from afar. I'm sorry, because his father had kissed him at one point, and his entire face swelled up. That's an allergy. He has an EpiPen.
Scared.
Yeah, she was terrified the first time that happened. He was like a tiny infant. It can also cause hives, itching, trouble breathing, wheezing, and anaphylactic shock. Anaphylaxis. Food intolerance, however, occurs when the body lacks a particular enzyme to digest that food. Two common examples are lactose intolerance and celiac disease. So I guess actually it's a food intolerance, which is an autoimmune disorder in which the gastrointestinal tract cannot process gluten, a protein, and wheat-based products. There are a bunch of other foods. Like, I had a friend that's celiac, can't have
That
seeds.
came up, like, because it's autoimmune, it was triggered by stress, and the whole stress of, like, moving down on her own and high school and all that stuff. So that's what triggered her, because she ate pasta her whole life with no
reaction.
You wonder, now you say that because I've wondered why. I know oodles of people with celiac. I mean, it's not, you say 4% for whatever, but it seems
Well, that's
like,
an allergy.
That's an
This is
allergy,
a-
but
There's
So-
yeah, it runs.
but there's a lot, but you wonder whether stress is an issue in the whole, like,
Oh yeah, unfortunately the problem with stress is that the first place that it goes is in your intestines. So that's why you have so many people with IBS, IBD, celiac, like that's where all of our stress sits, is right there in the guts. It's that whole mind-body connection. One day we'll get it. One day. An intolerant person, if you have intolerance, avoids the foods that trigger a reaction, but these reactions aren't caused by the immune system and they are not life-threatening. They're extremely painful and debilitating, but they're not life-threatening where you need like an EpiPen. Another cause of a food intolerance is irritable bowel syndrome. This chronic condition can cause cramping, constipation, and diarrhea. Constipation, then diarrhea, then constipation. It's like a never-ending battle. Food poisoning is also another intolerance. Toxins such as bacteria in spoiled food can cause severe digestive symptoms. I can't tell you when I took like a 3-day course on foodborne illness how disturbing it actually was. But a lot of people just pawn it off as like, whatever, I just ate something that I shouldn't have eaten. I wear gloves for almost everything now, and I never wore gloves. It's like, I'm like neurotic almost about it. I guess that's a good thing in my mind. Common food intolerance is lactose. This is a sugar that's in cow's milk, that toast on the end of it. It's a sugar in cow's milk that requires the enzyme lactase to be broken down into simple sugars for absorption. Sucrose or maltose, histamine, and tyramine. These are substances created in the fermentation process in aged cheeses. A lot of people have problems with aged cheeses for this reason. Processed meats, which you should stay away from anyway. There's no need to eat processed meats like hot dogs and all those like cold cuts and all weird things like that. Beer's a big one. Wine, vinegars and soy sauce, a lot of times those will cause problems with people because of the sugars that's in them. What? Yes. Yeah, I get gluten-free tamari, but I can't eat soy sauce anymore. Even though the ingredients are very simple, there's something metallic and disgusting in soy sauce, so I always use tamari in it anytime that I cook because it has a better flavor.
You don't use vinegar?
Low sodium. Yes.
So you do use it.
Yeah, I don't like too much of it in my own personal use, but it is, a healthy, for most individuals, it's a healthy food. But again, in moderation, I'm not drowning.
No.
I know people do shots of it and all kinds of stuff. When I was younger, the big weight loss fad at that time was like a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar
I was gonna say
followed
apples,
up
right.
by like
Honey, I
no,
just read something about this.
I forget what
I
it
was gonna say, I think that one's back.
Grape juice. It was
Ah.
grape juice and apple cider vinegar. Like
I just read something like 2 days ago about apple cider vinegar and honey or something. It's supposed to
Well,
be-
thanks to the internet, everything old is new again.
I know. We just
Round
like
and
to
round and
recycle.
round.
That's why it gets so confusing. We've disproven that like
Yeah.
30 years ago, but somehow it's back again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. Like apple cider vinegar burns if I drink it. You know, if you can take it, take it. You know,
Yeah, I
and
know.
they'll give you like they've got pamphlets. Like I think in like the 1950s they had a book of all the uses of apple cider
Oh,
vinegar and how amazing it was. I'm sure they're just recirculating that now. MSG is a naturally occurring or added flavor enhancer in foods. Food sensitivity is an understudied area. Generally means people have an unpleasant reaction to certain foods. Perhaps they develop acid reflux, there's that fun one again, nausea, or abdominal cramps. But again, there are no immune system reactions. These reactions do not always occur in the same way when eating the food. Sometimes you might be nauseous, sometimes you might, because food has tons of chemicals in it. So depending on how they're working in your body that day and, how many vitamins, how much exercise, how much stress, this, that, and the other. So, those are, they differ from time to time. Causes of food intolerance include sensitivity to food additives. Sometimes it's not the food, it's the crap that's added to it that you don't even know is added to it that's the problem. It's not,
Well, they don't add more than a certain percentage, they don't have to list it.
2%.
What does MSG stand
Monosodium glutamate.
It's a fun one.
I'm trying to write that down.
Just write down MSG. But there are so many different names to MSG at this point that if you see natural flavors or other flavors, just avoid it. It means MSG is in there.
What does it do that people want to stay away from?
It depends on who the person is. Some people will break out in hives. Some people just have, headaches from it. It's just an unpleasant food reaction that people have, or a substance, because it's not actually a food. But different people have different reactions to it. Some people just get tired. Some people sweat. Some people, it's a multitude of reactions that people have. And some people just want to be sick.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Out of Chinese food.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was gonna
yeah,
say,
certain
places
places
that might
still
have it, but
advertise
I always
no
thought it was
MSG.
only in not true.
Because it was so prevalent in Chinese food, because, yeah, that's
But it's in
what,
lots and lots and lots of things.
Oh, I like chips, right?
everything, because what it
Yeah,
does is it
processed.
opens up the cells of your tongue so that you can taste more. So in that process, what happened was you're trying to feed rations to people in the military. The food doesn't taste really good. You've got I don't know if you've ever seen them, but these little packaged squares that they have of dehydrated food that then you add water to, and somehow it's supposed to taste like dinner. It's like a Willy Wonka experiment. So you add MSG to that, it makes it palatable, and now people are eating what they need to be eating. So it was designed for kind of a good purpose, but unfortunately now we found out that you can get people, you got Lay's chips, you can't eat just one. Of course you can't, because there's MSG in it. Yes, so you can't literally eat just one because it opens up every flavor profile in your mouth and you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. If my husband and I eat something bad and it's, like a chip or something like that, I'm like, oh my God, this MSG is delicious. Like we joke about it, but we know it's in there, and then sure enough, if we flip it over, there it is, MSG or whatever weird other chemical name that they give it, so that you don't know you're eating MSG.
So it's actually glutamic acid.
Yes. Is the naturally occurring.
I did read
Substance.
somewhere that Doritos, so I'm sure all those chips are like genetically designed to be addictive.
Oh yeah. You add all kinds of chemicals to it.
All that powder on it,
I
yeah.
know.
It's not
I
nutritional.
know.
It is.
I haven't had dinner, let's not discuss.
I like to sometimes stick them on a sandwich and then
No.
Gluten-free. This is an extremely confusing topic, as I'm I'm sure most of you know. It's often overly grabbing unnecessary negative attention. Gluten's been in our diet for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That being said, we have bastardized that crop so that it barely resembles what it used to be. If you're eating ancient grains, like you're eating like freekeh and stuff like that most people haven't heard of, you're getting like the older forms of grains, like you're getting the heirloom gluten, stuff like that, and not this really highly processed, weirdly refined stuff. Yeah, of course there's a little more sensitivity to it. Like we're eating this really weird stuff that the body doesn't know what to do with. Unless you've actually been diagnosed with an allergy, you don't need to avoid it completely. Yeah, I eat it in moderation. You know, I don't eat crappy white bread, except for once in a great while, and I know it's going to be a problem if I eat too much of it. You prefer sprouted breads, but sprouted breads have wheat. They're sprouted wheat. Like, I don't have a problem with those. So I know it's not the gluten itself, it's how they processed it or whatever. There is speculation from Jeffrey Smith of EWG, Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. I watched a documentary. It wasn't a documentary. He offered a class on organics and GMOs and all that good stuff. And he suggested that when people switch to an organic lifestyle, they can suddenly tolerate gluten, where they couldn't previously. That research indicates that it's not the gluten. Again, it's the compounds of other pesticides and whatever other crap is in conventional food, that's the problem. So when these people switch to an organic diet, their immune systems finally were working the way that they should be working, and they were able to tolerate gluten. If you have celiac, I wouldn't suggest it. If you have an allergy, I wouldn't suggest, oh, I'm switching to an organic diet, now I can eat gluten. If you have a severe problem with it, that may not work. Wouldn't suggest it. But if it's something that you just have a sensitivity to, start switching to, an organic diet, which I would recommend anyway.
I would wonder also if you just got all processed too.
Yeah, I mean,
But you
there's
can't
still organic processed foods, but yes,
But
it goes,
yeah.
absolutely. You'll notice like all the chemicals and the crappy stuff that you're not supposed to eat, it's all compounded in like one Cheez-It. An additional theory about why gluten is problematic in this day and age is because it started being introduced to infants about a generation ago to help boost nutrients in infants. Infants don't have strong digestion. If you're starting to give them gluten at a young age, they're going to start to be intolerant because they just can't, they just can't digest it at this point. Since infants can't digest too many foods at birth, this may have led to people having a sensitivity to it. Soy sauce is something you want to watch out for as well, and may want to opt for a gluten-free tamari. There you go. Which I like better anyway. If you suffer from celiac disease, you must exercise extreme caution in everything, down to spices. I had a friend that couldn't eat garlic powder unless it was specifically gluten-free because they add fillers and all kinds of other funky stuff.
Imitation crab?
Imitation,
Oh,
the
It's
orange.
whitefish, yeah. They paint that. It's disgusting. I used to work in a salad bar and it
What the
came in
heck?
like
If
that.
you think about it, what the heck is an imitation crab?
Exactly.
I mean,
Why don't you just sell it as whitefish? I don't know.
I don't even think it's.
I'm not even sure it's
It used to be whitefish. It used to be, but that was in like the early 90s.
Yeah, I'm not
and-
even sure.
But now,
It's a
yeah,
processed food.
Yes.
crab's expensive and it's timely and it's labor
So now it's
intensive.
like, oh, I'll have the king crab roe. Are you sure it's a king crab? It's a real crab.
I know, right?
I mean,
Can you bring it out to me, like, so I can see it, and then,
Even most of the fish you're getting, it's probably shark. It's not halibut or flounder or tuna.
you're not getting anything they tell you you're getting. I can
Oh,
promise you. I can promise you. There's a lot of books telling you.
You probably wouldn't, if you eat actual tuna, you probably wouldn't recognize it because you never had it.
No, those tuna steaks are not what you think they are. Dairy-free, regardless of your ethical dietary choices, dairy is hard to digest, as is meat. It has nothing to do with the ethics when I say that. It's strictly the health benefits or lack thereof of it. Hard cheeses are hard to digest because they are salty, oily, and heavy. And, usually the tastiest ones. If you insist on eating it, add some spices to it to boost up your digestive fire.
Moldy milk.
if you're eating Indian food a lot of
You gotta
time,
think about it like that, right?
Yeah.
Moldy milk.
yummy,
It's moldy milk.
excellent. So I'm gonna have some more moldy milk, please. Pass the moldy milk. If you're from an ethnicity that's eaten it, it should pose less of a problem from you. It depends again where you're from. Those of Asian descent, those of African descent, not like us all originating in Africa, but like if you're of African descent, they do have a problem digesting it. It just happens that way. I cannot digest it that well. It just because of the DNA that I have, I don't digest it very well. It's just, it is what it is. If dairy is in your routine, the best forms for the body are yogurts, as long as there's not a ton of sugar. Again, you know, if you're gonna get yogurts, plain, boring yogurt. It
And
was,
your own fruit.
yeah, and naturally sweeten it if you have to. It's best to just kind of get away from it. If you're
Most of it's yogurt flavored,
stuffed.
yogurt style.
Yeah,
It's not real yogurt anymore.
and Greek style yogurt's not Greek. They don't do that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Is that supposed to be better for you, or is that just like a
It's
thing?
a facade.
Okay.
It's a fad.
It
I used to like the texture better when I ate yogurt.
Uh-huh.
I like the texture of that better. I would get the zero
agree.
fat, plain, boring stuff, but it has a nice mouthfeel to it. Where regular yogurt was just kind of, you know, it was like really thick milk or something. You know,
Yeah.
but I did like the flavor of it better. But if they've come out with studies that say it's not, you know, actually Greek, that's not how they eat it, and blah blah blah. Anything
Well,
you
it's
see in
just
the
that
grocery
it's
store.
so processed.
Yeah.
All the stuff is so processed.
Everything. 80% of the
You
grocery
know,
store. highly
It's
processed.
none of it's actual food. It's food-like
Food stuff.
Yeah.
Food stuff.
I want to hear a joke about, not a joke, a true story. My aunt had an Entenmann's cake. You know, talk about processed foods. And, you know, she's old or whatever, the cake kind of fell out and shrunk, and maybe 6 months later,
Oh,
it's the same. It looked the same.
Stop.
I
Did she eat it? 'Cause I'm curious what the texture would have been like.
But it was like, the big joke was like, oh my, it was like one of those
Marble
chocolate,
loaves or
chocolate
something?
fudge. A
Yeah,
chocolate
like
fudge
the
thing,
marble,
but it
yeah.
really, like, there was nothing on it. It looked.
The bugs wouldn't even eat it. It just somehow sat there and nobody cared. It's just like the McDonald's where they say that whether that's true or not, where they've had McDonald's burgers for like 2 years or something and nothing's happened to them. And I'm like, I don't know whether to believe it or not, but either way, I'll stay away from McDonald's. Nightshade-free tomatoes, white potato, eggplant, pepper, and tobacco all have levels of poisonous alkaloids in part of their anatomy, especially the leaves. I can tell you, I'm Irish. I eat potatoes like they're going out of style. When I was in college, my roommate and I would eat probably 5 pounds a week. I mean, we're poor in college. What else are you going to eat? Eat 5 pounds of potatoes. They're addictive. They are addictive. Eating them in a small quantity isn't a big deal as long as you don't have a problem with it. If you have rheumatoid arthritis, you may want to avoid them as well as gluten and sugar because those cause inflammation in the body in some people. Fad diets, and I'm going to go through this really quickly because, 3 minutes to get you guys home. According to Deepak Chopra, you should avoid all crash diets. I agree with him. I'm going with that one on that. I doubt that any of us in the holistic field disagree with that. You may see quick results, but study after study after study after study has demonstrated you fall off the diet and then all of a sudden you gain back, you know, whatever. You've screwed up your metabolism, you screwed up your health, and a plethora of other problems. Do not lose weight through diet alone. You must incorporate exercise. Nutrition is the biggest part, but you still have to exercise. You can't do everything through diet alone. Healthy tips for weight loss. On a scale of 1 to 10, 0 being starving, 10 being painfully stuffed, like Thanksgiving Day dinner. You want to eat at a level of 2 to, you want to eat when you reach a level of 2 to 3. You don't want to eat when you're at 0 because then what is it? Like you haven't eaten all day and then you go home and the entire cabinet looks delicious. You're hungry, you feel the growl, you drank some water, it didn't go away. Okay, you're actually hungry, so eat when you get to that level. Which is you're definitely hungry. What most of us say, oh my God, I'm starving, because none of us are starving. We're not.
Just starvation is when your body starts digesting itself.
Yeah, and none of us have reached that point. And then you want to stop when you get to 7, which is satisfaction. It's not full, but there's still room in your stomach. Your stomach's this big. If each of you makes a fist, your individual stomach is the size of your fist.
How do I feel like food?
It's amazing what the stomach looks, and that's why all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, I'm so full, because it literally is. When you, how did I do that? When you eat to a 7 on the scale of 0 to 10, your stomach is about 2/3 full. What that does is it allows your stomach to do this little thing. This is what your stomach is supposed to do. If you actually, it's cute. If you, after you eat dinner, if you have a spouse or a partner or someone that you're with, put your head on their stomach, because you'll hear it doing that cute little thing. Sometimes you hear it when you're sitting next to them and you're like, whoa, what's going on there? But it's cute because you hear the stomach doing this churning thing, and it's fascinating because, you know, I guess you don't really think about it necessarily, but it's grinding and it's masticating and it's doing all these things. If you've got it stuck to here, it's like this. I can't. How am I doing? And
Until
that's
you
where
get
you're in pain.
reflux, because your body, it's trying to do that,
And then it goes back up,
yeah.
and then your valves aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh, I didn't know.
So that 7, that level of 7 is where your stomach's 2/3 full. It's still got room to spit all that food around and throw in some enzymes and all this good juices and good stuff. The fresher the food is, the better. Optimal is organic from your own garden. Use a lot of herbs and spices, salt and pepper on spices. I know in America they are, but you know, it's outside of it. All kinds of herbs and spices. They're here to help you digest and help you heal. Eat with attention and intention, not distractions. In front of the TV, fighting with someone.
Sitting down,
Yes.
that's another
Yes.
thing. You
Oh
should
my
sit
God.
down, because
The
I
big-
mean, half the time, you know, you finished your meal you finished your sandwich or whatever it is that you made by the time that you actually made it to the table.
Yeah, that's what my husband says when I'm eating standing up, because it doesn't happen often. He's like, now you're a true New Yorker. This is what you guys do. You don't chew your food and you stand up while you eat. Okay, excellent. Avoid antacids. Listen to your gut, pun intended. Antacids dilute digestive juices that fight off dangerous bacteria. Oops, that's not real good.
It's also why you don't want to drink like a lot of water or anything while you're
Yeah.
eating, because it'll
4
dilute
ounces.
stomach acids.
Yeah, you need all those stomach acids. 4 ounces of water and you can sip it through your meal. They merely, antacids merely coat the body and do nothing but make a bigger problem. The stomach breaks down proteins by secreting different levels of acids for different proteins. Again, that's why you don't want to dilute it with any kind of weird stuff. It doesn't actually do much in the aspect of digesting carbs or fats. Those are more so in the small intestine, pancreas, hence diabetes being a problem, and the liver. Basically, the good thing about fad diets that I'll say is they generally do the same thing. They usually cut out all the processed foods. They'll take out different processed foods depending on the diet. But look at the first 3 words of diet, or the first 3 letters.
Was that why you wrote the thing like you did?
I did. See? Right? See how clever am I? They do eliminate a lot of the processed foods. That in and of itself will cause a lot of people to lose weight. If you're going off of crappy carbs and you're going out of crappy sugars and you're eliminating, you know, an excess of fats and this and that and the other, when you eliminate certain food groups, that's going to happen. Okay, everybody's going to lose weight, but then all of a sudden you've got some people that are on a high protein diet in the 80s. Susan Powter, does anybody remember Susan Powter?
I heard the name.
Right? She was like this, she was beautiful, but she was like 7 feet tall, blonde, like Swedish or something. She looked great anyway. And her thing was no fat whatsoever, because it was the 80s. So you could have lots of carbs, but no fat. So you could literally eat 4 bagels for breakfast with no fat cream cheese. Like that was part of the diet plan. Well, then what happened? It's like now you've got all these people listening to that. Now all of a sudden carbs are evil.
Don't carbs cause kind of you to be fat too many or no?
Any food is going to cause an excess of any food individually is going to cause a problem. That's why I have a problem with those fad diets, because they're always focusing on one food, and there is no diet in the world that's good for everybody. Even, you know, and you obviously know that I'm a big fan of Ayurveda. there's no one food that they will prescribe to you, and you. Like, there's no one food that's good for everybody. You have to listen to your own body. I know that I have to have smaller amounts of carbs. I can only have like 4 servings a day at most.
You
not
mean,
6
you
to
don't mean
10.
fruits and vegetables, you mean like, do you mean rice, potatoes, whatever, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Because I mean, fruits and vegetables are carbs.
Yeah, I'm going
You
by
mean-
the classic term of
Okay.
carbs, of like the starchies, and not I'm not even going into like starchy vegetables like butternut squashes and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and potatoes. But yeah, I do consider potatoes a carb, not a
Yeah.
vegetable. You have that big swing where there's no fat, but now we're going to eat a lot of carbs, and now, okay, well now we can't eat any carbs because now those cause diabetes, and people ate all of that, and it's just, it gets very, very confusing. And if you're going to follow a diet, it's going to work for a little while, and then eventually it's going to backfire, because typically what happens is you've eliminated like a favorite food or something, and now what's going to happen? Now you're going to binge on it, because after that time's up, you're like, I gave up chocolate all that time. Now I'm going to eat an entire bowl of like chocolate ice cream with like magic shell on top of it, and then, I don't know, chocolate sprinkles or whatever other things that people put on top of it. So I'm obviously not a fan of bad diets of any kind. Foods that lead to weight gain, anything in excess, which is what we just discussed. Can you gain weight from too many fruits or veggies? It depends on a myriad of other factors. If you're only eating butternut squash or eating like really starchy vegetables, sure, I guess they could lead to weight gain. I'm pretty sure I haven't ever met anybody that's eaten too much of like starchy vegetables. But again, anything in
They
excess.
didn't overdo avocados.
Oh yeah, I know people that are like, oh, I eat an avocado a day. I'm like, that's a lot of fat. It's a good fat, but that's still a lot of fat.
Which is fine if you're not, to me, I mean, if you're not fighting
Yeah.
weight. I mean, nuts are great for you, but if you're,
in small. Yeah.
yeah,
And look at the portion size that you're allowed to eat. You're allowed to eat like 14 almonds. I'm like, seriously? I could eat that in like a bite.
yeah,
What
exactly.
about peanut butter?
Oh, I love peanut butter. Evil. It's evil.
It's
Yeah.
I don't even put it on anything. I just use
me
the
too.
spoon.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste calories with bread.
It's just so good by
Peanut butter.
Save it
But
for the
it's
chocolate, so you can do the Reese's.
Right, right.
I think what it is it's a treat. It's a treat.
Do you put little raisins on it too?
Like,
I
and
think,
it's
yeah.
on the log.
See, I like raisins and peanut butter together. I
It's
will
like
admit
that. It's a healthy sweet.